All right, good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So, in this video, we are going to be talking about lumber and lumber prices. And for many of you who have been following me on my channel for any length of time, you know that I work at a lumber yard. I do retail sales for a living. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I know the timber industry, I know truck drivers, I know mill operators, I know other retailers, distribution hubs. There's really no corner of this market that I can't see. And for a lot of people out there, it gets very confusing on what has taken place within the lumber industry, especially when it comes to prices. Looking at lumber futures has a good indication of where lumber prices are moving to, but it doesn't give you a real good indication of what lumber prices are today, because the volatility that is now taking place within the lumber industry is quite extreme. And I'm going to share with you some evidence of that. Now, I can't necessarily show it to you outright because this is, insider, not necessarily insider information, but proprietary information that isn't something that I can just share publicly with you. So I'm going to share it without necessarily giving you the direct information on where I'm getting it from. Just understand that these are some of my vendors. These are the places that I go to buy lumber. I get units of lumber from them. I can buy truckloads of lumber from them. They are distributors, wholesaler. Just like anything else out there, you go through these shipping channels, these, distribution channels. These are two different vendors of the same product. Now, this is talking about kiln dried, standard and better, number 2 and better, Doug fir lumber. Now, it's incredible. Like, typically, when you call these different companies to get pricing, what you're going to find is that they're usually fairly close. Like, if one of them quotes you out $650 per thousand, the other one might be quoting out $685, right? So they would be fairly close within the numbers. Now, obviously, some people are going to have better pricing than others depending on when they bought their lumber and how it is they're marking it up. But the extreme differences that I am now seeing is absolutely incredible. Now, just to kind of give you an example of it right here, 2 by 12, right? Now, 2 inches thick, 12 inches wide, 20 feet long. Right? One of the companies is quoting it out at $715 per thousand. That's $715 per thousand board feet. The other company is quoting it out at $950 per thousand, over $200 per thousand more. Now, I know for a lot of people that's going to be very confusing to think per thousand. What does that mean? Lumber is priced out per thousand. So 1,000 board feet or a board foot, right? If you can consider it the easiest way to describe it is 144 cubic inches. But if you can imagine 1 inch by 12 inches by 12 inches long, right? That would be considered one board foot. So a 2 by 12 being 2 inches by 12 inches by 12 inches long would be 2 board feet, right? Because it's 2 inches thick, 12 by 12. 20 footer would have 40 board feet in it. So that's just the easiest way to understand how they price out lumber. They price it out per thousand board feet. So at $715 per thousand from one company and $950 per thousand from another, this is extreme difference. If you're quoting these out and you only call the one company that quoted you out $950 per thousand and you put your standard markup on it, most likely you are not going to get that job. Or if the customer buys it and then shops around later, is probably going to get very irritated because of the high price that they had paid, yet they could have gone to another company and gotten it cheaper. Now, it's my job as a salesman to find these deals so that I can offer up the best product at the best price, be competitive, and get the sale, right? That's why I check all these companies. But to see that extreme difference within it, that's incredible. Through all the years that I've ever done this, the volatility that we are experiencing here over the last few years has been intense, and this is not showing it letting up any. Here's another example of it. From one of these companies here, the 2 by 12 8 foot standard and better, it goes for $480 per thousand, $480. The 10 footers go for the same price, 480. But those 20 footers go for 950, almost twice the price. Like typically when somebody calls me up, they say, hey man, how much is your 2x12 selling for? Well, I would look up the 10 footers, I would see the price, and I would say, hey man, they're going for, 280 a foot, or, whatever it is that's going at the time. Right? I'm just making that number up. But in this sense, you can't do that because the 10 footers are half the price, almost half the price of the 20 footers. However, if you go over to the other company and check out their 10-foot prices, they have them at 710, right? 710 per thousand, where company A, essentially I got company A and company B. Let's do it like that. Company A has it at 480. Company B has it at 710. Again, if you are quoting out from these different companies, you're going to find that the extreme difference within prices is incredible. Like, this is something that is like almost outrageous to see. Now, on top of all this, like, I mean, there's more numbers in here and I can keep breaking them down. But what I find most interesting about all of this is that today the lumber futures price is at $620 per thousand. Half the lumber that is on this list is selling under that. Like, that shows that the demand for lumber in the future is far higher than it is today. It's quite interesting. Most people are looking at painful experiences coming into the future, but yet the demand for lumber seems to be quite elevated going into the future, where today it's very suppressed. Okay. What else? This is, what is there, another extreme one? But that's, I mean, I think that's probably the most extreme one, going from 480 per thousand on the 10-foot length all the way up to 950 per thousand on the 20-foot length. And that's what's funny about it, is that's from the same company. If you went to the 20-foot length at a company B, it's 715 as opposed to 950. These prices are just all over the place. See, here's another thing that you find a lot of times. People say, oh man, you need to go to this particular area or this particular store. The prices are way up or they're way low. Yeah, depending on what company that they decided to order from. Maybe they didn't have a buyer who was shopping around, just kept going to the same company over and over again because he just built a rapport with that company and just does business with them exclusively and didn't shop around on pricing, and then realize, man, you can get a killer deal at some companies on some products, but others are just a completely outrageous on how high they've gone. Okay? Again, when I look at this, this is the issues that we now face within today's market. See, a lot of times people have this tendency to just think that they're all working together, like they all have the same price, that they all collude, like they're all getting together to, like, into some kind of conspiracy to rip everybody off. But yet you can go and find from different companies here many different prices for the same product. And so when I think about people going out there shopping and even coming to me, like if they were like, hey man, what's the price on your 2x12? And I call up one company, get a price, and then quote it to them without checking around to see if other people have some better pricing out there, I may find that somebody else out there can quote it extremely different, way lower than me. And if it was that one board that they were checking out at the time, and the price difference was an extreme one, tell me, are they going to come back to me and try and shop with me again if I had quoted them out a price that was so different? But yet it wasn't me trying to rip them off. It was because I didn't check around, if that was the case at the time. But I know to shop around because I've been in this game for a long time. But again, I've never seen it so extreme. I think about what this means for like the individual going out there to try and quote out lumber for the future, like going out into, bid and quote out deck packages or house packages, and you have this kind of a volatility or extreme differences that is happening within the lumber industry. That makes it very difficult to operate in. Again, if somebody had come to me and said, hey man, how much can I get a unit of 2x12 10 footers for? I go to company A, get the price at $480 per thousand, and then go to company B and they have it at $710 per thousand. There's going to be a huge price difference within that. You know, it's hard to even say, like, you know, when you have one company at $480 per thousand and another one at $710, like, how do you even, like, say, where is the industry today? That's very difficult. You can't even tell. Like, I mean, that's so extreme within the differences within it that there is no way of telling whether the prices are high or low. Okay? You have to look at the demand side of things. And when I look at the demand side of things, I see that the demand is low. You can see it through permit issuance and new housing starts. Now, are they dropping further? They're not. To me, it looks like there is somewhat of a floor when it comes to permit issuance and new starts. You can see this by Googling permit issuance and then typing the words the letters FRED, right? And by putting in the FRED, typing the word Fred in at the end of that permit issuance into Google, you will find a Federal Reserve chart that will show permit issuance and another one for housing starts. Now, if you look at that over the last couple of years, it was much higher than it is today. But for the last 6, 7, even 8 months or so, there has been much of a sideways move within the permit issuance and new housing starts. Now, that could be a good or bad sign. It could say that we are at the floor, or it could be meaning that there is more bad times going into the future and we'll see even more depletion of starts and in issuance. If that's the case, then we're going to see lumber demand falling even further, which is going to make this issue of volatility even worse, as the inventory levels are extreme in some areas and depleted in others. Finding an ability to provide a steady flow of material going into this industry means that you have to have a demand side that's going to absorb it. At this point, the mills are only going to produce what is selling. And I mean, you think about it, studs, plate stock, 2x4, 2x6, these are the things that sell most frequently out there. That's what the mills are going to produce. You can almost see it within the 18-foot lengths. Like here, let me give you an example of it. Company A on their 18-footers compared to Company B. Now, we've already seen the extreme differences between these two, but the 18-footers are not that different. So, for example, 2x4, 18-footers, Company A, 575, Company B, 555. They're almost the same. 18-foot 2x6, 530 from Company A, 535 from Company B. Again, almost the same. 2x8, 18-footers, Company A, $510, Company B, $510. Exactly the same. 18-foot 2x10, Company A, 785, Company B, 725. A little bit of difference there, but that's about normal. You would see that would be like a normal difference, right? 2x12, Company A, 18-footers, 750, Company B, 710. So now 18-footers between these two companies that have an extreme price difference on just about all the other items out there, 18-footers is probably the least desired length out of all the lumber lengths that the entire lumber yard would have. 18-footers is probably the least in demand. And it's evident there within these two companies having the prices almost identical, very close to each other throughout the entire and throughout all the categories of widths. So this to me is, again, it's a sign that the volatility within the rest of the industry is showing that there is gaps in production. There is gaps in inventory, right? The demand side of things is not enough to keep these mills in such operation that they are going to fill all that inventories, all that gap in inventory. They are only going to produce what is selling, which is going to leave issues within this industry where you have price discrepancies of such magnitude like this. Again, like for a lot of people out there, they might hear this information and think, oh, well, it's no big deal. I don't really even pay attention to lumber, don't even have any idea about lumber. Don't even know why I would want to even know about lumber. Lumber is probably the number one indicator of how an economy is doing. Now, I know a lot of people out there will say, oh, no, man, you got all kinds of other things that you can look at that are going to be way ahead of lumber. And one of the examples that somebody gave me was concrete. And I was just like, yeah, you're right. The demand for concrete would be quite extreme. Indicator. It would be a good indicator of how the economy is doing. If you got a lot of demand for concrete and concrete delivery, then that's probably going to be a pretty good sign that there's a lot of economic activity happening out there. Here's the problem with concrete. Unless you know somebody who is in the industry, like a truck driver or working at the concrete plant or whatever, there's nowhere to go to see the demand for concrete. I can look out the window and see concrete trucks driving by, but I can't go to find any place on the internet that says, hey man, here's the demand for concrete and the spot price for concrete and all that other stuff. That's a very difficult thing to try and source out without knowing somebody within the industry. So although it might be a great leading indicator, unless you know how to find the information, which is probably not going to be on the internet, not very accurately, right? That's not going to be a good indicator. It's a great indicator if you could find the information, but the information is really straight up anecdotal from an individual who happens to be working that particular company. Okay? Looking at lumber, you can see through the lumber futures at least an increase or decrease in the pricing. Well, you can also see volume. Well, this is a good indication of what is taking place out there within the economy. If you have an economy that is moving, that is advancing, that is growing, the demand for lumber is going to be up. You are going to find people wanting to remodel. They're going to want to build for their own residence. They want to build for rental, for like a return on capital investments. There's all kinds of issues that start to take place when you have a lumber industry that is starting to move up. The issues are showing that there is something happening out there of advancement. Okay? But all things being equal, if you see the slowdown in lumber taking place, that's a slowdown in the economy. And I think looking at lumber is a great indication of this happening. A lot of people want to look at trucking and stuff like that. And I agree, those are some really good indications of what has taken place within the economy, especially when it comes to the consumer out there. But when it comes to economic activity, when it comes to building is the number one manufacturing industry here in the United States. I mean, you think about it, it's almost 100% domestic. Domestic labor, domestic supply of material, the product stays here. Everything about it is showing a strong economic activity when you see a lot of building activity happening out there. So when the building permits are slow or the permit issuance and starts are low, that's a sign that the economy is probably not doing as well as it could be. All right? But if you see it moving the other way around, well, this is people who are advancing, people who are wanting to participate, people who are actively trying to make something happen. And now the more you see the demand for lumber go up, that's more activity happening within the economy. Okay? The volatility is a sign of the issues that we're having within inventory. So combine all this stuff together. We have fear of inflation, right? The fear, uncertainty, and doubt of inflation is quite elevated. People are very cautious about that. Right? The demand for homes is still elevated. You can see that because the prices haven't completely crashed like a lot of people were anticipating they were going to. Right? Permit issuance are coming down, but they haven't crashed either. In fact, they're about the same level that they were back in 2019. Okay? So here we are in a situation within the economy that the fear, uncertainty, and doubt is running quite prevalent through the minds of everybody out there. However, what do we see actually happening? We have an economy that is less restricted than people ever gave it any credit for. We have a neutral interest rate that is rising and a Federal Reserve that is insisting on staying still. Well, if the economy is becoming less restricted on a rising neutral interest rate, what will we see come from that? Well, I would imagine that people are going to start participating in the economy again, and I think lumber is going to be the very good indication of that happening. Right now, we're watching lumber futures prices ticking up, and with the volatility that I see with the gap of production, I think it's only a matter of time before you start seeing lumber prices really start to move up. As many people out there are looking at the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, saying, oh no, man, everything is crashing, everything is horrible, you know, it's getting worse, the problems are going to get, you know, if the problems are going to get worse or whatever, like have all this attitude about it. There's some people out there who are participating. Okay? What gives them the confidence to go out there and do it? You know, how come it is that the top 10% of households are doing more consuming now than ever? See, 90% of the people out there look at the other 90% of the people out there saying, man, this is a horrible place to be. It's very difficult. The wages aren't enough. We can't make it in this world. But meanwhile, 10% are doing 50% of the consuming out there. And so we wonder how it is that anybody can do anything. You have to look at the top 10% who are actually doing the consuming here in the United States. That's what the banking system is focused on. That's what the administration is focused on. I would love for them to be focused in on the working class individual. That's not what they're focused on. Right? There is nothing that they can do to try and get us to increase our consumption, but there is a lot that they can do to get 10% to do it. As the return on capital starts to get redeployed back into the economy because of the elevated interest rates, those people are going to continue to separate themselves from the poor. You think about it. Most people who are living in the 90%, they don't participate in the stock market. They don't participate in finding places to deploy their money so that they can get a return. They can get an interest on it. 90% of the people are looking to try and figure out a way that they can scratch out an extra $1 an hour in their wages. How it is that they can stretch their paycheck just a little bit further because it doesn't make it to the end of the month. That's what 90% of the people are doing out there. So when I look out and I think to myself, man, what is it that people are going to do, or how is it that they aren't looking at you? Right? They ain't looking at you. They ain't looking at me. And not us at the working class, you know, trying to struggle paycheck to paycheck. They don't care about us anymore. That's not something that they're even interested in. It's all about the 10% because the 10% are doing the most of the consuming. So it's sad to say it, it's sad to see it, but it's also much easier to deal with the situation once you have accepted it. Once you have realized that the opportunities of trying to find how a good, average, everyday working class job is going to be able to provide enough to have the household and the kids and the retirement and the college tuitions and all that other stuff, those days are gone. They're out the window. It isn't going to happen like that anymore. These lumber prices here that I've talked about and shared with you today, this shouldn't be taking place like this. It shouldn't happen like that. Right? These lumber prices between these two companies should be somewhat close. And even the differences within the company themselves. I mean, going from one size of 480 per thousand all the way up to 950 per thousand, that's insane. There's no way that can be a normal lumber environment, the lumber industry environment. That's not what the case would be, right? This is volatile, this is extreme, and this is going to come back in a way that is probably going to have price increases if we can see any kind of increase in demand. So I think about that, how is it that demand's going to increase? Well, the financial institutions, right, the financial system would have to become less restrictive. Well, what if that's taking place right now? What if the financial system is becoming less restrictive? Who's going to take advantage of that first? Is it the bottom 90% of the people who do not have any kind of return on their money, no interest return on it? Are they going to take advantage of a less restricted economy first? Probably not. Right? The people who are going to take advantage of it first are the people who are going to get paid first from it. And if you have elevated interest rates, the people who have capital investments and get a return on that, they're the ones who are going to be participating in the economy. Everybody else who has to work for it, they don't earn enough to participate. And I mean, they participate in their necessities of life to try and survive, but they're not participating in increasing their consumption. Right? That's left up to the people who have the money, who aren't trying to work for it, who are getting a return on their investments. And that's sad to see it in this country, because there was a time when this country where a good manufacturing job was enough to do it. And since we're not there anymore, most people are focused in on some sort of way of fixing that to make it happen in a way that their good, average, everyday job is going to be enough to cut it. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for that out of the government. They're looking for that out of their company. They're looking for that out of life in general. And they're going to be looking for a long time, because it doesn't exist anymore. Not like that. There's nobody who can bring it back. And it's sad to say it like that, but once you accept the truth, then now you can move on. Wow, I can get a 2x12 16-foot Doug fir 2x for under $20. Yeah. Like, I mean, just to give you an example, if you bought, let's see, what do you say, 16 footers? Let me give you a quick quote. Like, okay, so one company is 10, 850, so hold on here. Where's my calculator? Oops. Oh, what? Oh, this thing doesn't have one on here? Oh, bummer. No way. All of them got them. Guess not. Weird. Alright, sorry, I thought I had a calculator on my tablet. That's weird that I don't have one on there. Interesting. Alright, sorry. Alright, after rebate because of Menards. Okay, super cool. He sounds university educated in economics, but street smarts too. Are you talking about me? Yeah, I have never studied economics in any kind of college course or anything like that. I've just done a lot of research and reading through the Federal Reserve speeches and documents. So when I start to talk, especially about like monetary policy and stuff, yeah, I can use a lot of lingo that is very similar to that of the bankers. But I'm not educated in any kind of, like, not formally educated. Everything I've learned through study, through my own self-education, through study and reading. But, I do have to give myself credit on it. I have done a lot of research. I mean, a lot of it. I don't know how many speeches that I've read from the Federal Reserve. I don't know how many documents that I have, gone through and done research on, and just listened to a million people out there talk about economics. And so I couldn't tell you exactly who or where it is that I learned economics from. I just picked it up over the last 20 years from so many different sources out there. I do have to say, like, when I talk about monetary policy, I sound so different than anybody else I know. Like, even like, the people I know from Rebel Capitalist or anything like that, I talk monetary policy in a way that they just, like, they don't even recognize it, right? And so a lot of times I think that's literally comes because of the working class point of view that I have. See, now they're looking at it like they're looking down on the economy. That's how most of the people who study economics, the rich investors, all the people out there, that's typically how they do it. They're like elevated and they look at the economy in this broad, like, kind of big holistic fashion. And then they, get into their little nuances of it. Me personally, I don't see it in that fashion. I see it from the boots on the ground looking upward, kind of thing. And it's a whole different kind of perspective. So what ends up happening is a lot of times the economists out there, the formerly trained will wait for something to come out. They're like, okay, so information's come out now. Let's read about this. Now, you see the data that's being done here, right? Well, all the data that those guys are reading, we already lived that. You know that, right? Like, we have already experienced what it is that they are now reading and trying to understand what is happening. They're already too late. That's why being in a working class position is probably one of the best things that you could ever do for understanding the economy, because you're getting the information in real time right now. Bang, 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 every day. Like, I'm sitting up there at my desk and I'm listening for the phone calls coming in. Are they bidding it out? Are they looking for carpenters? You know, what is it that's going on within these phone calls? Customers coming through the door. You know, what is it that they're asking for? Are they looking for, you know, like cheaper products or fancier, luxurious products? Like, these are the things that I think about constantly from the boots on the ground position. Not to mention, I call up my vendors. Hey, how are you? You know, are you busy this week? What's going on? Seeing any extremes? Anything you're out of? Anything that just shot up in price? Like, I have real-time connection to all these different places, and then I use that information to help me understand what it is that's taking place within the economy. Most people are stuck at the news. Like, they have no idea on what it is that's happening out there unless the information is being delivered to them. And they say, oh no, man, I can get information. Look, right here. See, I got all these data. And I'm like, and that's late information. You're already too late. I mean, if you're reading about it on a piece of paper, it's too late. It's already happened. It's in the past. All right, moving over. Are you familiar with Gary Stevens? He shares the same perspective on white-collar economists being disconnected from reality. I'm not familiar with the understanding of that. I mean, other than my own personal understanding, but not Stevens. I'm sorry. Charts are past indicators. Yep, absolutely. All Nighter Hider put out a couple of Alaska videos. Nice. We'll have to go check those out. It's probably more Pacific Northwest economics. My brother in Eugene is very in line with you. I don't. I mean, I've had a lot of people tell me, dude, you just, you know, you have this liberal Pacific Northwest, West Coast view of economics. You should really move to another place to get a better view of economics. When I hear that, what I actually am hearing is, dude, I'm going to put up a block wall and not retain anything that you are saying because I just don't trust your information. And so therefore, I'm just going to block you out. That's what I hear. Right? Now, me personally, when I would take in information, I didn't care where it came from. I didn't block anybody out. Even if I didn't agree with them, I would still sit there and listen to them, because there was times that I would be listening to somebody who I had absolutely no agreement with whatsoever. They dropped a bombshell of a nugget of information for me that just totally just blew my mind. I can't think of an example right now, but I remember it happening. I get an aha moment listening to somebody who I wasn't actually agreeing with. Yeah. But they happened to say something. It was like, oh man, that just put that idea into a different light for me. So for somebody to even come out and say, dude, I don't listen to anybody who's like, you know, talking about economics who lives in the Pacific Northwest, it's because you're probably clueless and closed-minded. Right? That's what would happen from something like that. I'm not trying to accuse anybody on here of that. I'm just saying that's happened to me in the past. I don't do that. And I mean, I literally do not take information from any particular source and say, man, that's not worthy information. I don't think I've ever done that. Not from the Fed, not from, you know, the government, not from anything. Like, if they are sitting talking something, you know, and I'll sit there and I'll listen to it and I'm like, I don't agree. I don't think that's going to work. I don't, you know, whatever. I mean, I might be that way the whole time, but then they might drop some information that makes sense. And it was just like, oh, okay. That kind of, I get it. All right. Because I feel like stumbling upon this live stream is extremely lucky. Well, thank you, GK. Well, I really appreciate that, and I'm glad you feel fortunate for being here. I mean, I like to share my ideas, my views, and my opinions out there, but I really think the comment section of this channel is really something of its own. Like, I am just kind of here in the background making noise. Really, it's the comment section that the real gold is, where the real gold can be found, you know. All right, Simon, have you ever read Marx? I haven't read it outright, no. No, I haven't. I understand the Pacific Northwest and the lumber industry. I have a logger buddy that worked out there. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people, like even a lot of the people that I know in the industries don't have a view of it quite like I have, you know. Like, they don't. You know, it's just, it's hard to it's hard to find all the information like I have been able to acquire, right? It's not hard, right? You can do it. You can find people out there. Being at this particular lumberyard that I am at, in the location that I am in, has given me the ability to really network out there when it comes to this industry. Like, to be able to call up my buddy and say, hey man, what's going on in the woods right now? You know, he's a logger, right? I have a few friends like that, different companies that I can, you know, ask about. Mill operations, not only my local mill operations, but I know mill operations all the way up in the, you know, from British Columbia all the way to the East Coast. There's mill operators that I can call and say, hey man, how are things going right now? You know, or production up, production down, you know, how many lines you running? These are the type of questions. Truck driving, right? The truckers that I know who hauling logs off the hill, off the you know, hills down to the mills, or taking the lumber from the mills out to the distribution networks or whatever. There's like literally no corner of this market that I can't go and focus in on and watch or view. And since most people can only really take in, and they might have like a view of it in a broad sense, but really they have a magnitude of just one focus, right? The mill that they work at, the loads that they haul, right? The jobs that they are doing. That's their main focus. But me, like, I have my job here, but then I take it so extreme to other retailers, to other, you know, to other places out there to find out what's going on within this industry. It just gives me a view unlike anybody else. Real market price familiarity is insanely useful. Sounds dumb, but I studied grocery prices for a year, doing price reviews weekly. It was insane how much I learned about how groceries actually operate. Yeah, it all of a sudden starts to, like, because a lot of times I will hear people say, oh man, they're just ripping you off, or, you know, they're just, you know, they're just gouging or something of that nature. And I'm thinking, well, if you got a quote at $9.50 per thousand when another person is out there quoting it at $7.15 per thousand, I could see where somebody would come up with that idea that there is price gouging taking place. But that's not what's happening here. These people bought at a high time. They're still stuck on those high prices trying to recoup some of their money. The other company, they were able to buy at a low price. So they're offering it up at a much better price than the other company can, because the other company is sitting on expensive lumber. What are they supposed to do? Bleed? Right? Most likely that's what will end up happening, is that they're going to have to move that stuff out at a cheaper price and take the loss on it, especially if competition is going to be prevalent within the economy or within the market, offering it up at a better deal. And that's just the unfortunateness of it. Do you think these differences in prices is evidence of people scared speculation of prices going into the future? No, I think the volatility and the differences within the prices is due to the fact that we have, excuse me, put that back there, a little sun shield to keep from cooking my phone. I honestly think that the volatility in these prices is due to the inventory gaps that are coming from the mills themselves. Like, you have to think about it. If you're a mill that's operating in low demand, are you going to produce anything other than what it is that people are in high demand of? I got a few more minutes. Like, you know, I'm producing lumber. If I'm going to produce lumber out there and there's not a lot of demand for lumber, what is it that I'm going to produce? That what sells. 2x4, 2x6, you know, plate stock. Everything else is not so concerned about making that stuff because there's not a lot of demand for it. There's a lot of, the demand is in these other things. So when you end up seeing stuff like that, then you're going to have a huge volatility in prices, right? Because the other lumber is still in demand. It's not like there's no demand for it. It's just that the majority of it is in another spot. So if you have low demand for lumber and the mills are like, hey man, we need to produce, that's what is selling, they're most likely are going to back away from the lesser demand lumber, like the wider lengths, 2x8, 2x10, 2x12, those longer lengths. Those are going to be the ones that are going to be very difficult to source out on a regular basis because the mills are producing the 2x4, 2x6, stud length, random length. That's what is selling. So we can see that now taking place within the prices. To have one company quoting at $480 per thousand while the other company is quoting it out at $710, that's a huge price difference. But yet this is in a pocket of the lumber industry where there's somewhat of a decent demand for it. So now if one lumber company was able to purchase it at a cheaper price and the other one was buying it at a high price, you have this huge extreme difference within it. Right? This is what ends up occurring. However, if you look at something that doesn't have a lot of demand for it, those 18-foot lengths, the 18-foot lengths are almost exactly the same between the two companies. Right? And so there's not a lot of demand going on there. The price is very stable. And this is what this will eventually smooth out. Right? What will end up happening is that if the lumber demand increases, and I really believe that's going to happen once home builders' sentiment on buyer traffic, that little section, like home builder sentiment has all kinds of different categories. That one particular category, buyer traffic, when buyer traffic turns positive, it's on. And I believe that the lumber prices will skyrocket. Okay? As the builders want to take advantage of the buyer traffic coming back to market, they're going to start a bunch of homes. When they start those homes, that's inelastic demand. Remember that. It's inelastic demand. Elastic demand means, hey, I'm going to back off on purchasing this lumber. It's too expensive. I'm not into it. But if I sign a contract to build and I'm in motion and I have to go into construction and I can't find that lumber or the lumber prices are moving up, they will pay any price. They're under contract. They have to, right? And that's one of the reasons why we saw the lumber prices moving up to 1,700 per thousand during the pandemic or shortly after that, is because of all that inelastic demand. Everybody was moving out of the city. They were moving out to the country. They were wanting to remodel the house. They were wanting to build a new house, and that demand for lumber could not wait. It was like once it started, they were on. They were like, man, where's the lumber? We got these contracts to build these homes, to do these remodels, and we can't find the lumber. Lumber prices start to move up. Well, something very similar can start to take place. Right now, there's like home builders not doing well. Lumber mills not doing well. Inventory, big old giant gaps in inventory. Prices all over the place. Nobody knows exactly where the prices should be. Now, that is not necessarily a good sign, but it is a sign that there is going to be a shift at some point. And this volatility, the extreme differences in the price and the gaps in inventory, once the prices start to move up, the mills are going to want to take advantage of that. If the demand is there, they're going to produce. That's what they do. Like, the mills don't want to not produce. They want to produce. Home builders want to build homes. That's what they want to do. That's how they make their money. They don't want to sit around going, oh man, I don't want to build homes. That doesn't make any sense, right? They want to build them, as many as they can. But if the buyer isn't there, if the buyer traffic is negative or depressed, then why would the builder take advantage of that? They can't. In fact, it would be damaging to them to try and build a house without a buyer traffic that is prevalent within the economy, because they may end up building a house that they have to sit on. And that's not what a speculated builder wants to do. He wants to build a house and get it out of his possession, get the money for it, and start the next one. All right, moving on. This opens the door for weed to be used in medical and industrial areas. Okay, it's cheaper to buy crap structures than build new right now. If we build new, it will sit. All right, just subscribe to your Patreon. Well, thank you, GK, man. I really appreciate the support, man. I'm glad you came to the channel today and you're finding good information here. All right, curious, who do you follow online, if at all, um, for info in the way I look to you for boots on the ground information? Um, I'm going to tell you now, I don't know anybody who is quite doing it like I am. All right, what time is it? All right, I got a few more minutes. I don't know anybody who's quite doing it like I am. When I started this channel, I was just sharing my boots on the ground information from being in the building supply industry and then understanding and learning a lot about macroeconomics. I kind of incorporated these two, brought it to the attention on YouTube, and people really liked it. And so they were like, man, this is unlike anybody else, right? And now my vendors and other retailers and stuff, they could do what I am doing out there, but it's very difficult to incorporate the macroeconomics view into it if you didn't already have that interest or, essentially for me, that hobby of studying that. So for me, I think I'm the only one, like within this particular industry, who's doing it quite the way I am. Most of the time when you hear people who are working in the construction industry or something of that nature, like they're the owner of the company or something of that nature, right? Very, very rarely do you find somebody who's like, hey man, I sell 2x4s at a counter and then I go down to the yard and I load them up in the back of a truck. That's what I do every single day. That's my day. That's my day job. But then my side hustle here on YouTube is studying macroeconomics in a way that is, my opinion, has been quite profound for understanding what it is that's going on in this economy, especially from the working class point of view. And because other people agreed with that, I've been able to actually do some pretty cool stuff. Like I traveled around the country, done speaking engagements, 3 different conferences, not just the Rebel Capitalist, my buddy George Gammon, who's like super cool dude, who invites me to come and join him over at the Rebel Capitalist events that he puts on. But I've also gone to like the Silver Symposium where I met G. Edward Griffin and a bunch of other really cool economists, YouTube economists out there. I've been to Zuber's conference quite a few times, and Zuber's conference are absolutely the best networking conference you could ever possibly go to. I mean, these guys are definitely the family-oriented feeling kind of group. I mean, I got to give Mike Zuber credit for that. He did a really good job putting that community together. But this is this has ended up being what happened as I started sharing a lot of the information and stuff out here on the internet with you guys. But it's my passion. This is what I love to do. I mean, I love this topic. I love the idea behind it. I love coming out here and sharing some of the things that I'm viewing from the job that I have and then the information that I dig up. So, UE has a natural love of economics which cannot be compared to high-end education. I think UE is hands-on, which is which is rare. He even lives in the forest for the lumber industry. Yeah. All right. I eat a lot of bananas. Well, good for you, Wayne. I like bananas myself. All right. If you ever get to Nashville for a speaking event, I'll be there. Well, thank you, GK. If you ever know of a Nashville event that somebody would want to invite me to, let them know. All right. Hot take, bananas are overrated. I don't know about that. Okay. You guys are awesome. I love to stay and hang out because this has been a great live stream. We just blasted through it. 48 minutes. I can't believe it. It feels like it's only been 20 minutes since I started. I hope you find the information useful. And again, when I think about people who are going out there to price out lumber, to think about the projects that they're going to be doing going into the future, be sure and shop around, right? Like, I mean, being in this game for as long as I have, I know to do this. I know to shop around, that not everybody's going to have the same prices. This company may have a better price on some products. This company might have a better product on the other, or better prices on others. I know to shop around like that. So for you to go out there and shop around when it comes to buying lumber is probably the best strategy that you can take, right? Because again, you know, you come to a salesman and say, hey, how much are a particular 2x12 going for right now? They call up their one vendor that they really like to use. They get their price, they mark it up, they tell you what that price is. But if they didn't shop around, they may not realize right now the volatility within the industry. I'm sure most of the salesmen are figuring this out by this point. But they may not have understood that they just got an incredibly high price and that the other guy, the competition, may have an incredibly cheaper. And this is what I'm experiencing right now within the industry. So for people to say, oh man, these guys are expensive or those guys are cheap or something like that, I think this is a very obscured market right now, which is going to make it very difficult to try and figure out what it is that is going to be like the best opportunity for you. All I can say is shop around, be constant with, be vigilant, right? Check it once a week or, you know, every other week or something like that. And, you know, check many different locations to see, you know, if they have, you know, if somebody has a better vendor or a better price vendor out there that they were able to acquire some cheaper lumber from. So, all right, I got to go back to work, guys. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.